Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the 2020 Landlord Symposium. My name is Shawanto Moran. I am the Assistant Director of the Louisville Metro Office of Resilience and Community Services. Our Resilience and Community Service team, aka the RCS team, and our partnering agencies have worked hard putting together this convening. We are so excited that there are more than 100 registrants today. We look forward to all participants gaining some helpful resources and valuable information. In a few moments, Dr. Lisa Lee Williams, the program manager for our Housing and Support Division, will give an overview of the agenda and introduce our awesome presenters. But quickly, I want to tell you about the work of Resilience and Community Services. RCS is an agency of Louisville Metro government and a lead partner in the Neighborhood Place Network, which serves tens of thousands of Louisville residents each year. RCS focus areas include strengthening families, stabilizing households, preventing homelessness, and housing the homeless. During these COVID times, more than ever, we need to work together to keep individuals and families safe and healthy in their homes. We need the entire community to step up. Each year, our housing and support program helped more than 500 persons move from homelessness to housing. We are especially excited to announce we're deploying more housing vouchers over the next few months, thanks to an ESG COVID relief grant received. In order to serve all of those in need, we need more landlords and more available units at the table. So please consider being a part of the solution to connect housing to hope. I sincerely thank you all again for being here today. Now it's my pleasure to introduce a message from our mayor, Greg Fisher.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the 2020 Landlord Symposium. Today's convening will provide you with some great information and resources that you can implement into your business. You'll hear about vital resources that Metro government and community partners have put together to help prevent evictions and help to strengthen households. We also look forward to sharing how landlords can serve as critical partners in our city's work to provide housing for individuals lacking shelter. Thanks to our city's housing and support team, part of the Louisville Metro Office of Resilience and Community Services, for organizing this symposium. I'm also grateful to our other presenters and thank them for sharing their time and expertise. Our Housing and Support Division has a long track record of working to house the homeless. This team administers rental assistance and case management for hundreds of individuals each year, made possible by federal HUD grants. At this moment, the demand for affordable housing units in Louisville is high, and the inventory of affordable housing units is too low. As a city, we must take whatever steps we can to help all the people of Louisville, especially as we go about the difficult but necessary work of addressing the COVID-19 pandemic, the resulting economic recession, and the calls for racial justice and equity. Participants in our housing programs include single adults, seniors 65 and older, veterans, families with children, individuals with disabilities, and domestic violence victims. Landlords are critical participants in our Housing Choice Voucher Program. Partnering with Louisville Metro can be a win-win opportunity for property managers and landlords. What's the benefit to you, the landlord and the property management? Consistent rental payments, case management support services, and the satisfaction of assisting unsheltered citizens with safe and healthy housing. Housing obviously allows individuals and families a safe place to manage COVID-19 contacts, including a place to self-isolate if necessary. Over the next 3 months, we will be seeking to house 150 to 170 households in mostly one-bedroom units. So please consider accepting a HUD housing voucher if there is any availability in your inventory for any size unit. Thank you for your time and for your compassion.
One is called Partnership Pays. We'll hear from our representatives at Develop Louisville. They're going to talk about some landlord and property owner programs that we have available. We're also partnering with Deborah Gilbert and her team at Louisville Metro Housing Authority, and they'll be talking about the topic no vacancies, where they'll be getting into going over with us inspection readiness and eviction prevention programs that they have available that are also very similar to the programs that we have here at RCS. And then we're also excited to have Megan McGinn, the CEO of All Trade Property Management. She'll be talking about a program they launched about 18 months ago, Second Chance, how they're managing prior evictions with their tenants. And then I'll come back at the end of those three presentations and talk about Home Sweet Home, supporting the homeless through housing, and talk about the 10 HUD housing programs that we offer to the community as well. And we'll also have an opportunity for you to ask questions because this is a virtual environment and we won't be able to get everyone in to ask verbal questions. We are asking that you use the Q&A function to the right of the presentation. Just type in any questions that you may have. We'll monitor those and we'll address as many as we can throughout the presentation. So again, thank you for coming. And I would like to turn it over now to Director Marilyn Harris with Develop Louisville.
Good afternoon, everyone. So I am the director of the Office of Housing, and we have several programs that we work with landlords through, but we are going to focus just for a few minutes on why we need to do partnership. Not so much the specific partnerships, but why we need to do partnerships. I'm not driving, so I can't move it. There we go. Okay, so let me just briefly explain about the housing needs assessment that was done in 2019. The housing needs assessment done in 2019 shows that there are 121,000 renter households in Louisville. That's quite a substantial number of households that are renting. About 29% of those, or 35,000, spend more than 30% of their income on housing costs. So there are also an additional 13%, or 15,700, that spend more than 50%. And general assumption, the general feeling is that any household that spends more than 30% of their income on housing costs is cost burdened. And so we use the term cost. I'm sorry, can you go back, Al? So 30% of their income on housing costs, and those housing costs include rent plus utilities. So when we start to think about how many households that are cost burdened in our community, we are looking at almost 40,000 households that are cost burdened and need some type of assistance. So there are several programs that offer rental assistance. But then there are other programs that we specifically deal with within the Office of Housing, where we develop housing, and then those units are rented for a reduced rate. So what might rent on the general market for $800, if we provide assistance through my office, they might have to reduce that rent to, say, $700 or $600 a month. And so that is one way that we provide housing through the Office of Housing. And that we subsidize or we reduce the rent. Okay, Al. The other way is that we have what is called subsidized housing. And a lot of people refer to that as Section 8. But there are a plethora of programs that fall under the umbrella of subsidized. So subsidized housing means that a tenant always pays a standard 30% of their income towards rent. So it doesn't matter what they make, they're always going to pay 30%. If they make $1,000 a month, their portion of rent is going to be $300. And that's going to go towards rent and utilities both. The program that is providing the subsidy will then pay the difference. So if they can pay $300 and the rent is $700, then the program will pay that difference. That is the only time. Sorry, Al, can you go back? Going too fast for me. That is the only time that rent is truly affordable to a tenant, when they live in what we deem a subsidized unit, when there is rental assistance. So in the city, we have various types of subsidized rentals. We have Section 8, through LMHA, but we also have the home TBRA program administered through the Office of Resilience and Community Services. But we also have some elderly programs. We have HUD 811 or HUD 202 programs that also have some type of subsidy. So subsidy is a broad word that, you have to understand where that money's coming from to understand exactly what that means. I provided you an example here of how subsidy actually works, a real life example. And so this is a tenant that earns $15 an hour, but they're only working 25 hours a week. So that's an annual income of about $19,500 a month, $19,500 a year. When we extrapolate what that is at 30% of AMI, that means that household can only afford a unit that costs $487.50 a month. And that is rent plus utilities. The average rent in the city of Louisville for a the average rent for a unit in the city of Louisville is $770. So this household could never afford rent and it be affordable for them if we didn't provide them some type of rental assistance. So in this case, the rent that's for the unit is $800, but you've got about $150 in utilities there. So now we're looking at $850. Well, if the tenant can only pay $487, $150, they're going to take their portion of that $487 and they're going to pay $150 towards utilities, and that's going to leave them $337.50 to pay their portion of the rent. Then you'll see the very last line shows that the subsidy portion is going to be $362.50. So that is the money that will come from whoever is providing that rental subsidy to the landlord. So the landlord will get two checks or two sources here. They're going to get $337.50 from the tenant on a monthly basis, and then they're going to get $362.50 from whoever is providing the subsidy. Yeah. So what are the benefits of rental subsidy? I mean, yeah, you're going to get your money, but you're also going to get a timely payment because those payments are issued every month at the same time. So if you, they process those on, say, the first of the month, and those get mailed out by the second or the third of the month. So you're going to get timely payments. You're also going to get compliant tenants. You're going to have a larger pool of tenants that will apply. There are, some really long-term tenants in some units that have rental assistance, and you'll have no unauthorized tenants. And it is a good investment property. Go ahead, Al. We're going to talk about each one of these as we kind of go through. So you're going to get reliable payments. The subsidy provider provides that payment every month at the very beginning of the month. And your tenant is always going to be in an affordable unit. And so the tenant is always going to be able to afford the unit. The key point with subsidy and the tenant's portion is that if the tenant loses income, their portion can then go down. So your tenant is always more likely to be able to afford it and be able to pay on time. And just remember that even if you are participating in a program with rental subsidy, you should manage the late payments like you do any other property. So your late notices should be given in a timely manner. But it also means that an eviction, if they get a late notice and you follow through with an eviction, they could lose their voucher. And tenants don't want to lose these vouchers once they obtain them. Go ahead, Al. So we have a long wait list of applicants who are looking for rental housing. The number one thing that tenants complain about is they can't find available housing. So there is a large pool of applicants, and many of these people have waited years to get rental assistance. So you'll see my little graphic here is the Wonka golden ticket, because a lot of times it is kind of the golden ticket for people who are extremely low income. So when they get the voucher, that means that they want to do everything they can to keep it. Some of these tenants have waited 5-7 years to get some form of rental assistance. So this is the golden ticket in their world, and they don't want to lose it. So they're going to do whatever they can to comply with what it takes, which means they're going to do the best they can to pay that rent. You will not have unauthorized tenants or guests, or if you do, that is a lease violation and you can evict. It doesn't happen too often because people don't want to lose this voucher. You can do monthly inspections and you can inspect for housekeeping issues. So you can make sure that your property is being taken care of in a good manner. You know, I had a Section 8 tenant for 8 years in my rental property, and there was an annual inspection by the agency providing the tenants in the unit. But also, as the landlord, I did inspections. You can also ensure peaceful enjoyment by other tenants, because failure to do that could mean loss of their voucher. And any other lease violations, unauthorized pets. You know, I had a guy who was running a laundry service out of his unit that he was getting rental assistance on, and we were paying the water. So that would be a lease violation, and we ended up having to evict him. So you are going to have some tenants who are non-compliant, but the vast majority of them are compliant because they do not want to lose their rental assistance. Okay. So it's also a great investment opportunity. You will have long-term tenants. If you are a landlord that is going to keep that unit up, you have a much better shot of getting long-term tenants because they, A, don't want to move. B, they, when they find a house that's a good house that they want to stay in, their kids might be in school in the area. It's hard to find other housing in the area. So you're going to find you might have some long-term tenants. The properties could be less expensive. Some of the properties are smaller. Maybe it's a different location or the location of the property. Maybe they're less expensive because of where they're located, but you also aren't providing necessarily the amenities, because a lot of times they're single family homes and the amenities are provided by the community. So single family units are ideal for a voucher program, because a lot of tenants would like to live in a single family house, but they cannot find them. So, okay, Al. So what are the requirements for participation? So the unit has to meet the minimum housing code. And so we have health and safety standards. We have annual inspections to ensure that they meet those codes. Let's talk about health and safety standards for just a minute. Anything that affects the health or the safety of the unit is considered a health and safety standard. That includes ingress and egress. So somebody that puts a bed with a big headboard in front of a window, that is a health and safety issue. They can't do that. You can't block the ingress or the egress. But you also have to maintain the units. The plumbing has to work. The kitchen facilities have to work. The stove has to work. The refrigerator has to work. There has to be adequate electrical service available to the house. So if we come in and do an inspection and there's extension cords running all over the house, then we're looking at maybe there's some health and safety issues, and that might have to be addressed. But these are also going to be addressed annually at the annual inspection. And so the housing department, either through the Office of Resilience and Community Services, I'm sorry, can you go back out? No, other way. There you go. So the either LMHA or the Office of Resilience and Community Services, somebody will come in and do an inspection annually to ensure that it meets minimum housing code, but they are also looking at health and safety standards. Rent has to be what we call reasonable, and that means that there's a reasonability test, a reasonableness test, and it cannot be excessive or over what is considered the fair market rent for the unit. Utilities need to be in the tenant's name if they are expected to pay the utilities. So if you have a house and the tenant says, I want to leave the utilities in the landlord's name and I'll just pay you, that can't happen. Utilities do have to be in the tenant's name. You're going to screen your tenants as you would any other tenant. And so that's a standard application process. And just make sure that you apply the standards fairly and uniformly to everyone that applies. And, we could do a fair housing training, but that could take, hours, and we don't have that today. And I would just encourage you that if you are a landlord and you haven't been to a fair housing training, you probably need to attend one in the very near future, just so that you're up to speed on some of the changes that have occurred over the last couple of years. And I would also say you need to provide you are required to provide an initial eviction notice to whomever the subsidy provider is, whether that's the Office of Resilience and Community Services or LMHA, it doesn't matter. You need to provide that initial eviction notice to the provider so that the provider is put on notice that their portion of the payment may cease. All right. So there are some common missteps that we see when we're dealing with landlords. And the first and foremost is failure to comply with the Uniform Residential Landlord and Tenant Act. So I literally was just speaking with a gentleman this morning, and he said his landlord told him he did not, now this is not a subsidized unit, but his landlord told him he did not have to go to eviction court to evict him, that he could just come in and set his stuff out. And I'm going to tell you, you cannot do that as a landlord. I would not advise you to threaten your tenants with that, because that is a violation of the Uniform Residential Landlord and Tenant Act. But it covers other things, like your requirement as the landlord to maintain the unit in good working order. So there are the tenant responsibilities in the Uniform Residential Landlord Tenant Act, and there are the tenant responsibilities. And both the landlord and the tenant are responsible to do to comply with that. My advice to you as a landlord is I would print out a copy of the Uniform Residential Landlord Tenant Act, and I would give it to your tenant at the time that you sign so that they understand that that is required. I hear quite a bit from tenants that they withheld the rent because their toilet wasn't working and the landlord never came to fix it. And so they thought if they withheld the rent that they would, the landlord would come fix the toilet. It doesn't work that way. So tenants don't always understand their responsibilities, but landlords don't always understand their responsibilities. 4th of July weekend, I was doing whatever I was doing, and my phone rang from an advocate who was calling because a landlord had gone into the basement of a dwelling house where a family lived that was kind of locked and not available for use by the family, and shut off all the power in the house to make the tenants move. You cannot shut off all the power in a house to make the tenants move. That is a blatant violation of the Uniform Residential Landlord and Tenant Act. So I am absolutely advising you, if you do not know what is in the Uniform Residential Landlord and Tenant Act, KRS 383-500, to read that. So some of those things are refusing to make repairs. So not doing an inspection on the unit, that is a misstep for landlords. I highly advise, if you are a landlord, go inspect your unit every 30, 60, 90 days. You do have to give notice, so you can't enter the unit without approval. That's covered under the Uniform Resident Landlord Tenant Act. But you should be doing those inspections on a unit. And I can't tell you how many times a landlord says to me, I haven't looked at my unit in the last 3 years. That's a huge red flag. Please be doing inspections on your unit. Do not enter the unit without prior notice to your tenant. You can't just show up one day and enter the unit. That is covered in the Residential Landlord Tenant Act. You cannot keep security deposits, okay? You only get to keep security deposits if you can itemize why you're keeping those. You just can't blanketly say you're keeping your security deposits. And you also have some rules regarding handling of abandoned property. And I think that's important for you to understand. If a tenant abandons property, they just up and move out in the middle of the night. You have a certain obligation as a landlord to do something with that property. You cannot just get a dumpster and throw it in the dumpster and be done with it. So, and that is covered in the Residential Landlord and Tenant Act. So those are some things that we see quite frequently that you guys probably need to be ahead of the game on and make sure that you are complying with it.
Hey, Marilyn,
I'm going to turn it over to Kay McAfee. And Ms. McAfee is the Director of Programs and Policy for our office. And she is going to talk about some current programs we have going on right now.
Hey, Marilyn, before Kay gets started, There's a question that came in. Does the right to do a monthly inspection need to be included in the specific lease?
So I am not a landlord. I mean, I am not a lawyer, but I think that every lease should contain language that says the landlord has the right to enter the property with prior notice. And I think in the Landlord Tenant Act, it's at least 48 hours notice. So, as a landlord, I have had tenants that I have done monthly inspections on, and it was not included in my lease. It just had the language that said I had the right to enter to do inspections as I saw fit.
Thank you. And there was another question, will slides and material be shared after the webinar? And yes, I'll post in the Q&A who to contact for that, but this session is being recorded and it is being streamed live on Facebook, so you can refer back to it for additional information. So thank you so much. Kay, take it away.
Sure. Thanks, Lisa and Marilyn. Again, my name is Kay McAfee. I'm the Program and Policy Manager directly out of the Director's Office for the Office of Housing. I will start with beginning just addressing COVID-19. Since the beginning of COVID-19 pandemic, in addition to not only the public health and economic impacts, housing instability has been one of the biggest threats posed since the fallout of this pandemic. As Marilyn mentioned, in Louisville, we have 121,000 renter households. On average, delinquency rates fall somewhere between 5 and 10% a month. But what we're seeing during the pandemic is those rates have increased approximately to 20 to 30% in delinquent households each month. Out of the Office of Housing, we have about $21 million that has been awarded from the federal CARES money. And what we are doing, we are infusing and investing those dollars, not only with our direct programs, but many of our sister agencies and partners throughout the community. One of the programs that I'm going to touch on is the Neighborhood Place, the Office of Resilience and Community Services. They have what is called a tenant-based program. And that, again, is for tenants who are looking for direct rental and utility assistance. The tenants do apply on their own behalf, and so they are responsible for setting the appointment, providing all that initial documentation. One key element to that application process is I spoke to a lot of landlords who may have been hesitant to provide a tenant with a late notice. And so now, under the pandemic, you do need to provide what is a 30-day letter for non-payment. The tenants actually need that to apply for rental assistance. And so we urge landlords, if a tenant is late, go ahead and provide them that letter so that they can start the process and initiate some type of assistance for their rent. The Neighborhood Place currently does pay up to 3 months of past due rent, or they have a cap of $2,500. And again, to start that process, tenants simply reach out, and the phone number is provided, 502-977-6636, and they schedule an initial appointment. Right now, those appointments are running a couple weeks out, about 10 to 14 days out. But the full process for a tenant to get an appointment, bring in their paperwork, and process is about 3 to 4 weeks for landlords to receive a check for rent. So again, the Neighborhood Place, there's several locations depending on the zip code, but when a tenant calls in and schedules the appointment, they will be assigned to somewhere in their area. So that program is the tenant-based program. We also recently actually provided about $3 million to the area community ministries. Again, there's various locations depending on zip code. They service households based on what area of town they're in. They pay about 6 months of rent. And with that program, they will actually pay for deposits and 6 months, either retro or forward, but they have a cap of a 6 months rent. And the reason we're doing that is because what we learn is that many times households, individuals, families just don't have the money to pay the security deposit. And so the area community ministries have received funding to actually help people if they have been displaced or put out there, able to get into housing. So Area Community Ministries is one of our partners. Again, they have about 15 locations. Many of them do have certain days. They take appointments, of course, but they also have walk-in hours. So we encourage individuals to contact their local community ministries for those walk-in hours, or again, to set an appointment. So both of those programs are tenant-based. Again, the tenant has to reach out, schedule the appointment, and do the paperwork. Next slide, please, Al. Next slide. The landlord tenant-based rental assistance program is ran directly out of our Office of Housing. And I will say we have started that program in July 1st, we began that program. Since July, we have spent about, we're right under $1 million in spending in that program to date. And then for that program, that is driven again by the property owner or the landlord. And so we have a website that I will share in the chat box. You'll go directly to louisvilleky.gov, eviction prevention services, and the landlord or property owner can apply directly. So the reason we have the landlord program is quite simple. It is to help kind of streamline the process. If an owner has, several units, several multiple properties, what they can do is they submit one application for all of their tenants, and we're able to process that for assistance. We again pay 6 months of delinquent rent. The tenants actually have to complete a certification that does identify that there is a COVID-related reason why they are behind on rent. And so COVID-related means that, what is the reason that they're behind on rent? It could be that they've had some type of issue as far as preventing the impacts of COVID, responding to the impacts of COVID, or they've had a direct impact, maybe a job loss, maybe illness, maybe sickness, maybe childcare. And so we actually take and process the information from the landlords, and we, again, will, depending on the ask, be able to send one check out to the landlord. That program has about a two-week turnaround from the completion of application. I will make a note here that a unit cannot be subsidized by both programs. So if a landlord has a tenant that has successfully gone through the neighborhood place and received funding to pay their August rent, we are not able to pay. Of course, that would be duplicity of services. So we do check those records as well. But we try to give owners both options. If for some reason a tenant doesn't have the ability to complete the paperwork on their own, the landlord has the opportunity to apply on their behalf. And then, of course, we have the eviction diversion program. We're really excited about this program. It rolled out in August. It's a great service to the community. So through our eviction diversion program, again, we have spent right about $1 million impacting 262 households through this program. And so this program, we are working directly with the courts. We are working directly with legal aid to assist tenants who have a pending action in Jefferson County Eviction Court. And the way that works is, again, landlords are expected to provide the 30-day notice when it comes to non-payment. And at that initial court date, the judges, legal aid, all of our partners are directing tenants to go ahead and contact our office directly. We will work with the landlord and the tenant to determine what the delinquent rent is, and we will pay that judgment out to, again, prevent people from being set out. So again, that is a program that we work directly with the landlord and the tenant. However, there does need to be a pending action in eviction court because we actually report back to the judges during the week on every single case that comes through eviction court. So as it says here, there must be an action filed. We can pay 100% of the past due rent, but the landlord does agree to forgo all fines, fees, court, and attorney fees, as well as, dismiss the action for eviction. Another one of our partners is the Homeless Coalition. We have provided $50,000 in funding. Again, they are able to assist with security deposits and rent and helping Section 8 vouchers as well. And so this is kind of an overview of all of our eviction prevention services that are provided out of the Office of Housing. I know we have given a lot of information in this first part of the segment. I will let you know that when you go to louisvilleky.gov, you are able to give us a call if you have a question. Once you dial into our phone number and you press 2, that is the landlord only line. So you are able to ask questions as a landlord or an owner about your application and what that looks like. You can also email us. There is also an email link there. So if you have questions about any portion of this presentation, any questions about our services and programs, please don't hesitate to ask. In addition to the eviction prevention services, much of the community knows that we have between $6 and $8 million available for home repairs. A portion of that does include grants and forgivable loans that are directly available to investors and landlords. Again, to help people stay in housing, decent, safe, and sanitary housing, and also part of our efforts to prevent gentrification in various areas of our urban core. So again, if you have questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to us via phone or email. We're happy to talk about housing.
Thank you, Kay.
Thank you.
We did have a couple of questions that came through. One says, we get a lot of questions coming in about these programs. Can you provide the best phone number to call for area community ministries and the landlord-tenant-based rental assistance programs?
Absolutely. So our phone number for the Office of Housing and the landlord programs, you would again call for eviction prevention services, 502-574-3737. Option 2 is for landlords only. And again, that's for all things related to eviction prevention services.
Say that number again.
It is 574-3737, option 2. For landlords only, and that is all things related to eviction services. If there are questions about any of our home repair programs, you would call 574-5850, 574-5850. And again, that's information about any home repair programs, whether it's rental or occupied, for investors to apply for those grants as well.
Oh, thank you. There's another question. Is there a way to get money to landlords before an eviction is filed in the diversion program? If the tenant misses court, there are many reasons why they could. They don't have the opportunity to get assistance from the Office of Housing.
Yeah, so great question.
I'm going to jump in on this one, Kate. 2 things. I want to let you know that on the area community ministries, there's a couple ways they can access those funds. They can go to stopmyeviction.org and complete that. And when they complete the additional assistance required tab of that, someone from the area community ministries will reach out to them. They can call 211 and tell them they need rental assistance, and someone can complete the form for them, and they'll get it to the applicable area community ministry. Or there is also a area community ministries directory that is available, and I was trying to put it into the chat, and I don't see that I'm able to do that. So I'm going to try and do that before this is over. If I can put it into a PDF and put it in a chat, I'll try and do that. If not, when we're done here, I will put it on as a slide so that you all can get it. And then regarding the eviction diversion program, the Kentucky Supreme Court actually does say that the tenant has to show up in court, but we are, in our administration of that, we run into tenants all the time that didn't show up into court for one reason or another, and we are providing them assistance if they reach out to us, and the landlord is willing to set aside that eviction. So setting aside that eviction means that you actually have to file a document to have that eviction set aside so it is not on that tenant's record. And that is really important because we want to make sure, I think Kay just put the Louisville Ministries, is that what you've done there, Kay? You put theirs? Okay, so Kay's put that in there. The other thing is that if you are a landlord and you have already filed eviction against a tenant, and your court date, I'm getting some that are as far down the road right now as November 16th. So if you have a tenant that you've already filed eviction against, you as the landlord can call us and we can work the opposite. So generally the tenant calls us and we work with the tenant and then we reach out to the landlord. But more and more we're getting landlords that call us. I filed an eviction against Jane Doe. And here's her phone number. Maybe you guys can help her. And so we will have no problem reaching out to Jane Doe, telling her that we were trying to help, asking her if she wants to participate. All they would have to do is certify that they have a COVID-related loss of income or increase in expenses. And that's a pretty broad definition. I ran into a lady I was dealing with the other day who she did not lose her job during COVID. She didn't lose her job at all. However, she lived on one of the TARP routes that was canceled due to COVID, due to lack of ridership and people being healthy at home. And so to continue going to her job, she went from paying $1.25 to ride the TARP to wherever she needed to go to ending up having to pay Uber. And so that is a huge increase in expenses for her. So while she didn't lose income, that increase in her travel budget or her transportation budget is definitely COVID related and is eligible for participation in the program. So we kind of look at it as we can't even begin to understand all the ways that COVID has affected people. We've got, maybe it's a grandmother who, is on SSI. I mean, she's or Social Security. She's on a fixed income, but her daughter lost her daughter's daycare. The kids' daycare, and now grandma is, because we've gone to NTI. Grandma didn't really lose any income, but now grandma has 3 kids or 1 kid or 2 kids in the house all day. She's doing NTI with the kids. Grandma's now having to feed the kids. That's an increase in expenses. Grandma had to get Wi-Fi so the kids could get onto NTI. We just cannot begin to understand all the ways that COVID affects people. So while we generally say it's a COVID-related loss of income, it could really be a COVID increase in expenses due to things. I just want to make sure I throw that out there and that everybody understands that. So you can access the court diversion program only if you have that eviction filed, but the landlord could also contact us and we would reach out to the tenant. And if the tenant doesn't show up in court and they call us afterwards, we still will help them if the landlord is willing to forego the eviction and set it aside.
Well, thank you all so much. This has been an awesome presentation, and I see that there's still questions coming into the Q&A, and I know that Marilyn and Kay will continue to respond to those as they're vetting it. But let's move forward with our agenda. It's time for us to hear from the topic, No Vacancies, Inspection Readiness and Eviction Prevention. Our presenters in this area will be Director Deborah Gilbert, who's the Director of the Leased Housing with Louisville Metro Housing Authority. And she's going to be joined by Monique Duval and perhaps Mark Roseberry, Customer Service and Ombudsman Field Representatives for Louisville Metro Housing and Authority. So I think we're starting with you, Monique, so take it away.
Yes, we are starting with me. Okay, let's go to the first slide here. Okay, so when we're talking about no vacancies, what we're talking about is basically what this means to our landlords, and it means money in your pocket. Simple as that. Tenant retention is very important. If we want tenants to stay, it's less paperwork for us overall, so that's always great. We also stress about getting your unit information out there via internet. GoSection8.com is a great resource. Also, just word of mouth. A lot of our tenants get a lot of information from other tenants. So if they know that you have a vacancy that's open, they'll tell their cousin, friend, somebody else that's applying to the program about it. Another thing we like to stress is be responsive and attentive. That's just in general. If you're renting to somebody that's on Section 8, a different program, just a regular renter, being responsive and attentive keeps tenants in units. And yet again, word of mouth is huge. Also, if you have your own lease and you're not using a Section 8 lease, please stick to it. Do not divert from your lease. When you're diverting from your lease, we have no answers when tenants are calling in asking why you're not using your lease. If your lease says this is the way you do things, please do it that way. Also, invest in your properties. Make sure that you're doing the upkeep that is required, and also let tenants know about common practices at the units. And this includes, like she mentioned earlier, if you come every 90 days to do a check, let them know that. Or if you expect them to change out a filter, also let them know that ahead of time. Make sure that these key points are pointed out at the time that tenants are signing leases. Also, open communication with tenant current perspective and your housing voucher partner, which includes Section 8 here. We want to make sure that you guys are talking to you, because most of the people that I talk to during the day, it's not a problem with Section 8. It's a problem that they're having either contacting their landlord or getting a timely response. So we want to make sure that that communication is open, that you're always talking to your tenant before coming to us, unless you then cannot reach your tenant. Also, make sure that we have your current email address on file for 72-hour inspections. This is only for initial inspections only. We currently do not have this set up for annuals. So initial inspections, if we have your current information, we're trying to process those in 72 hours to keep your units full of tenants and keep our tenants happy as well. Okay, the next slide here. Okay, inspection readiness. So I hear about this all the time. Lots of landlords contacting us asking, do we do pre-inspections? And the answer is no. We do not have the time and we do not have the resources to do that. So what we're asking landlords to do is to check out the unit before entering. You look at the siding, you look at the roof. This is your unit. Before you've turned in lease papers, you go stare at the outside, check the siding, make sure nothing's hanging off, make sure the gutter is attached correctly, make sure there aren't any broken windows. Just simple things like that prepare the unit to be inspected. Also, do a walkthrough with the tenant before turning in lease papers. We have a checklist that is included in our packet. Walk through with the tenant. Open up cabinets, open up the fridge, make sure things work. This is something that's very important. Also, check all windows, doors, outlets, make sure they function properly. And when I say check windows, I mean open it, make sure it stays, close it, make sure it can lock if it has locks on it. Doors, same thing, open, close them, make sure the handle's not loose. Outlets, you can check those to make sure that they are wired correctly. And also a big thing is to make sure that smoke detectors have batteries and function properly. Sometimes tenants remove those, for what reason, I have no idea, but it happens a lot. So just make sure that those are functioning properly. Also check hot and cold water, check for leaks. When you're also doing that, just turn on the water, let it run for a little bit, make sure it's getting up to temperature, and then open the cabinet below it to check for any leaks. Also, make sure that the utilities are turned on. I've seen a bunch of recent inspections fail because the electricity is not on in the unit. Electricity has to be on for us to inspect that unit. And also, there's a reference down here for Chapter 156 Property Maintenance Code. This is the Jefferson County code that we do use to complete our inspections. So when we're saying make sure your property is up to code, that is what we are referring to. The next slide, please. Now, this is a big thing that a lot of people want to know about. The top 10 reasons that units fail. And I see these across the board. Big one, windows not functioning as intended. As I previously said, lift it up, make sure it can stay up by itself, close it. If there's a lock on there, make sure that lock works. Outlets wired incorrectly and or loose. 10-second fix. Fails units constantly. Weather stripping. When you close a door and you see sunlight around the edges, that means that door is not properly weather stripped. That will fail a unit because it increases utilities for tenants. Dirty furnace filters. You can buy a whole pack of them for like $1.60. And if you want to also do checks when you go in to change that, that's something that you can do as a landlord. Like I said previously, the smoke detector batteries being removed. If if your smoke detector is a lithium one, make sure it has the correct batteries in it. Loose or missing doorknobs, that happens all the time. Just go in there, check the doorknob, give it a little wiggle. Light fixtures missing or broken. Lots of globes have been removed. Yet again, not for sure why this happens, but it does happen frequently. New furnaces that have not been inspected yet. So if it's been installed in the last 2 years, we do expect for that to be inspected. Just that it's been put in properly, that it's functioning correctly. Now, if it's able to be looked up online, that's fine. It doesn't necessarily have to have the green sticker, because I do know that they are running behind on that. But if I can look up the permit, that'll still pass. Leaks underneath sinks, like I said, just run the water, open the sink, open the cabinet, make sure that. Another big thing that's been happening is incorrect paperwork. We want to make sure that paperwork is correct. If your unit is a 2-bedroom unit, do not put a 3-bedroom unit on your paperwork. Your unit will fail for that. If you are unsure, refer back to that chapter 156. It'll tell you what we categorize as a bedroom. And then just make sure that if you're supposed to be doing the utilities, that is marked for landlord, or if the tenant's supposed to be doing it, that is marked that way, as well as appliances. Okay, and I'm just going to briefly touch eviction prevention. Proper vetting before letting a tenant move in is huge. We only do a very small minimum amount of vetting here. We check if anybody's been a sex offender, a lifetime sex offender. We check for drug offenses, and we will pull recent evictions only. But if you want a thorough background check, you will have to do that yourself. Also, having the tenant pay a deposit at the signing of the contract. This is huge, because if tenants know that their money is on the line, there's a good chance they're not going to destroy that unit. Okay? Also, treating a tenant like any other market renter, that's another thing. You treat them all the same. It doesn't matter if they're receiving some sort of subsidy. They're the same as any other renter. Big thing, make sure that you're sending out your notices. You can send out a 14-day notice, a 7-day notice. With us, we just ask that you also send us a copy. Keeping good records of rent logs is also huge here. Make sure you're up to date, because we will ask for that information, and we expect it to be in order and recent. Do not let your rent logs lag, because when those lag, bad things happen. Also, keep us updated during the process. If you plan on evicting them, please contact us. Let us know. You can contact the ombudsman here. We have a landlord liaison here that also tracks us. Let us know what's going on so we can keep an eye on the process. And also, we have an incentive for eviction prevention that Deborah is going to go into now, and I've posted a link down there at the bottom that you guys can get.
Hi, I'm Deborah Gilbert, and I'm going to discuss our eviction prevention incentive program. That's just for Louisville Metro Housing Authority, no other program outside of that. And this is really, something that maybe a last resort. I would prefer that our participants take advantage of the other incentives that the city has before having to do this one. Okay, so with our eviction prevention incentive program, we are encouraging landlords to work with the participants to enter into a repayment agreement instead of filing for an eviction. If the landlords agree to do the repayment agreement, then they'll receive $500 from us. There are some conditions that need to be met before we will do the $500, which next screen, please. Okay, so if there's unpaid rent beginning the month of March and any months following. So that's where it needs to start. If it's in the month of March or any month following March, then they will qualify for it. You need to provide verification of the unpaid rent, whether it's a rent ledger or a 30-day notice, to pay. Then the monthly repayment amount is capped. So that means that the rent that the participant is currently paying, combined with the amount that they're going to repay each month, cannot be over 50% of their monthly adjusted income. Now, that is something that a staff person at my office will help you with. But we don't want to set the tenant up for failure and have them sign a repayment agreement where they're going to pay $200 a month in addition to paying $500 a month in rent. We don't want something like that. So we want to keep it capped, keep it manageable for them. Another thing that you'll need to do is that there's no interest applied, for the unpaid rent, and there's no prepayment penalty. Also, you'll need to provide to LMHA the signed repayment agreement. So those are the basic things that you'll need to do for that incentive. And then you'll contact Rebecca Amon James. She's our landlord liaison, and she handles that part of the incentive. So she's your contact person. Now, I want to say that LMHA is not going to enforce this repayment agreement. As far as like, you can't call us and say, oh, the person's not making their payment this month. We're not enforcing it in that way. We want to keep a copy of the agreement for the file. Now, at the end of their lease, if the participant wants to move, but they are not in good standing with the repayment agreement, we would consider that as being non-compliant. And that is something that we will not process the participant to move since they're not in good standing with the repayment agreement, which is also seen as non-compliant because it's unpaid rent. So that's the extent of how we would enforce that. So if you have any questions, you can give Rebecca Amon James a call. You can call direct number at 569-6060, and then you can get her direct number. If you have any questions, please let me know.
Can you repeat that number again for us, Deborah?
Yes, this is the number to our operator. So it's 569-6060. I had her number and email address on the other slide. So if you want to go back to that slide, you can get it, her contact information. Amon@lmha1.org, or her number is 569-6948.
Very good. Well, we had a comment here about a client who is applying for assistance to see if he can get 1 month's rent for a new unit. And basically the question is there a pot of money for that? He's trying to move from one unit to another. What pot of money would that come through? Is there something that LMH, Louisville Metro Housing Authority has, or sounds like he might go to a neighborhood place for that type of assistance as well, if it's COVID related that he needs that. Anybody else want to pitch in?
Well, I would say LMHA doesn't have assistance like that. You're saying he needs money for a month? Is that what the question?
I'm just going to read it. I have a client who's applying for this assistance to see if he can get 1 month's rent for a new unit. He has to move from his current unit. His inspection failed for the new unit, so Louisville Metro Housing will not pay until it passes. He plans to move anyway, but needs assistance.
This is Marilyn at the Office of Housing, and I'm going to refer him to the Coalition for the Louisville Housing and Homeless Coalition for the Homeless. Gosh, I should know their name off the top of my head.
Coalition for the Homeless.
Yes, because we have given them money. It does have to be COVID related. So if there has to be some nexus with COVID why he doesn't have the money available to do it. Again, that's a pretty broad definition. As a matter of fact, the Coalition for the Homeless is basically saying that they're kind of using a very broad paintbrush and saying that this is to prevent COVID. And if they don't provide this, that this person would be homeless. And so that kind of covers the prevention of COVID. So I would have him reach out to them. And if you just let me jump in 1 second again, Lisa, somebody asked a question about what if it's not COVID related. All of the eviction prevention programs that Kay spoke about previously Those are all funded through the federal CARES Act. And so there does have to be a nexus with COVID on all of these dollars for the eviction prevention program.
Very good. So to our Louisville Metro Housing team, it says if landlord and resident both agree, are you currently allowing mid-lease cancellation?
Right now we're trying to reduce movement throughout the community due to the pandemic. So we're only like doing moves that are necessary. So that's kind of where we are right now with that.
Okay. And I would say for resilience and community service housing and support programs, we're agreeing as well. We're trying to keep folks stable where they are and not interrupt their housing if we can at all help it. One additional question for whoever can answer, any of our panelists that can answer. If you have a tenant that is moving out at the end of this month, but hasn't paid rent in 3 months, can you still apply for the rent that is owed? I'm assuming this is through the landlord eviction process, or is it from either vantage point? Whoever wants to take that. Marilyn, maybe you.
Yeah, so he is, I just need to make sure I understand. The tenant is moving, but he is delinquent on his rent?
That's correct, 3 months.
Okay, he's delinquent 3 months on his rent. Yes, he can still apply for the rental assistance, and I would advise him to either contact the neighborhood place or the area community ministry. Considering he's moving at the end of the month, it might be a wise choice to go through the area community ministries just because they're getting dollars out the door fairly quickly, but I do know they have a huge backup. They are starting to accumulate the exact same kind of backup that that you guys have at RCS. They've got, you know, hundreds of people in the queue that they are working with. So I don't know if that helps or not.
Well, that is an option that wasn't there before. So great. Well, thank you so much, Director Gilbert and Monique Duval, for that presentation. Now I'm excited to introduce to you all the topic, Second Chance, Managing Prior Evictions. Our presenter today is Megan McGinn, the COO of All Trade Property Management. So Megan, take it away.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Williams. Thank you to Louisville Metro for including us today. I am so proud to represent All Trade and to be recognized as a management company that works hard to creatively engage in the community. So we are All Trade Property Management. We're a property management company here in Louisville. We manage about 4,500 units, including single-family homes, multifamily communities, commercial spaces, and we are in 4 states. I'm going to talk a little bit today about our Second Chance leasing program. That is one way that we work hard to reduce barriers to housing in the community while also balancing business interests. I do just want to reiterate why we work with agencies. Similar to the benefits that the previous presenters mentioned, there are many benefits to working with agencies. Not only are we increasing housing options in the community, but most of the clients have a caseworker or an advocate that they work with for their housing needs. And if there are any issues we might be having with the resident, whether it be payment or lease violations or just communication issues, we are able to reach out to those caseworkers and get assistance with any issues, untangling those issues, and it's extremely helpful. There's obviously the benefit of steady income from those assistance payments, and you are able to increase your occupancy, which is always a benefit. The objective property inspections help us keep our units safe and healthy. A couple of agencies that we've worked with include Catholic Charities and Kentucky Refugee Ministries. And we have invited Catholic Charities in the past to come and do trainings for our staff so we could better understand what refugees have gone through in order to arrive at this point where they're moving into one of our apartments. Through those discussions, we learned that refugees have gone through a rigorous application process in order to arrive at this point. And through those discussions, we decided as a company that we would eliminate the need for an application for those particular clients. Again, to reduce barriers to housing, because they don't have a credit score here. They don't have a criminal history here, because a lot of the times they are arriving from the airport and going directly to that apartment that has been secured by their caseworker. Additionally, we learned through our work with the refugee agencies that there is a high need for units that accommodate larger families. So we took a look at our occupancy standards, and we revised those to allow for larger families. We look at the square footage as opposed to the HUD guideline of 2 heartbeats per household. So that's allowed us to work a little bit better with the refugee community. And that's just one other small example of how we are working creatively with some of the agencies around town. My background is in social work. And so my degree allows me the privilege of supervising social work practicum students. So we've developed relationships with U of L and Spalding, and I supervise practicum students at AllTrade. So what they do for us is they administer our second chance leasing program, which I'll tell you a little bit about more in a moment. They do things like create and update resource lists and also reach out to residents who might be behind on rent, talk with them about what resources might be most beneficial for them or most appropriate, and work to connect them with those resources. Now I will tell you a little bit about our second chance leasing program. It is an eviction forgiveness initiative. We launched it, like Dr. Williams said, about 1.5 years ago, and it's a partnership between AllTrade and the Louisville Urban League. It is not a solution for emergency housing, unfortunately. It does take a little bit of time. It does encourage financial empowerment, and classes are involved. And I'll tell you a little bit more about those. So we are proud to partner with the Louisville Urban League, a well-respected agency and organization here nationwide and here in Louisville. They focus on jobs, justice, education, health, and housing. A couple years ago, I was doing some research about creative programs, interesting ways that property management companies could support the community and their residents. And I spoke to a woman in South Carolina at a property management company, and she's had all kinds of interesting ideas. And one of them was that she was working with the local Coalition for the Homeless. And that Coalition for the Homeless, they were working with veterans, and those veterans did not have a rental history or any sort of landlord verification. And that was part of that property management company's application process. So the program that the veterans were participating in did require classes. And the classes involved rental readiness, financial counseling, credit repair if they had credit. And this property management company, the lady I was talking to, she decided to accept those classes as that part of the application process in lieu of the requirements for the rental history and the landlord verification. And I just thought that was really cool. And shortly thereafter, I was reading the Metropolitan Housing Coalition's annual housing report, and there was one small mention about the Louisville Urban League's rental readiness classes. And I had an idea. I thought perhaps we could marry both of those ideas. And so I reached out along with my social work intern at the time and contacted the Louisville Urban League, and they were up for it. So that's how this program was born. This program forgives an eviction. It forgives a past eviction. At this point, our requirements do require that be older than 1 year. It does forgive a low credit score if it's in partnership with that eviction. So the eviction on the applicant's record is the factor that allows them to be a candidate for this particular program. It doesn't forgive lack of income, criminal history. The applicant must meet all trades resident selection guidelines otherwise, and those are our eligibility criteria to apply and live in an all-trade property. Those are on our website. I think most management companies or landlords probably have something similar. So once they receive a letter from AllTrade after they've applied to rent that confirms that they have been declined, that letter will clarify whether they are a candidate for the particular program. So basically, if the box is checked that says they have had an eviction in the past, that indicates that they would be a candidate for this program. We then refer them to the Louisville Urban League, and they go through their process. The Louisville Urban League had this process already laid out. They have trained financial counselors, they have the curriculum. We trust them to handle all aspects of this financial counseling. The applicant will attend a fit to rent class. They will attend a couple financial counseling sessions with the trained counselor, and they have some documentation that they need to submit. After the applicant has gone through all of these steps, then Louisville Urban League comes back to us and they submit to us some needed documentation that we want to have on file just to verify that they have gone through all of the steps. And that does include a certificate of completion, also a promissory note or payment plan for any outstanding past rental debt. At that point, we reassess that applicant's application. We will grant a conditional exemption if they have past rental debt, as long as they've gone through that process with the financial counselor to create a payment plan. Any outstanding balances with the utility company must be paid off. That is a requirement, and that is typically handled through the financial counseling. The credit score, as I mentioned, that is waived. And the applicants are then upgraded from declined to a conditional status. And at AllTrade, the conditional status indicates that this resident or the applicant is a little bit higher risk still. So their security deposit is a little bit higher. It's a deposit and a half. In order to allow these participants to work through the program and complete all the steps, we do hold their application for 60 days. Now, if it takes 90 days or 120 days, however long it takes, they need to resubmit their AllTrade application. Typically, we hold an application just for 30 days, but for this program, we hold it for 60 days to allow some time. I have a few statistics. Now, it's a fairly small sample size. It's just been about a year and a half. We are in the midst of a global pandemic. Things are just not normal. But this is what we've found thus far, and are pleased to have had 35 move-ins through the program. The first move-in was in July of last year, and so we have 4 residents who have now been residing in an AllTrade apartment for more than 1 year. There has been, during that time, unfortunately, 1 completed eviction, and currently, as we speak, there is 1 pending eviction. But I just confirmed, and thank you to Marilyn Harris and Kay McAfee and their hard work, that resident is getting assistance through the Jefferson County pilot program. I touched base with Dina Elliott. She is the housing program manager in preparation for this presentation. And she is very open and excited to establish relationships with additional landlords if anyone is interested in doing a program similar to this. They have the bandwidth to accommodate that. She can be reached by email, and I have her email address here. And she does request the subject line, landlord partnership, so that she can prioritize that. I do see a question in the chat that asking if we charge application fees, and the answer is yes. Really, the applicant goes through the same process as any applicant at AllTrade. Now, I will say we do periodically have properties where they're running an no application fee special, for example. That all can be found on our website. But in order to get to the point where we are able to confirm whether or not someone is a candidate for second chance leasing, it's the standard application process. So typically, yes, the application fee would be charged. There is also an application fee at the Louisville Urban League, which is $25 for their classes and their courses. So I thank you very much. And I do just want to mention that if any other landlords, property owners, property management companies have other creative, interesting ways that they might be engaging with agencies or other organizations in the community, I am very open and very eager to hear what you all are doing. So please, you can see my email address on the screen. Please reach out and let me know when we might be able to talk. And I'm also glad to share any and all of our materials related to the Second Chance Leasing Program, if anyone is interested in establishing any sort of similar program.
Thank you so much, Megan McGinn. This was awesome. I'm glad you're so swift. You picked up your questions on your own from the chat. That was awesome. I don't see any other questions. Do we have any other questions for Megan? I'm not seeing any others come through. Well, that doesn't mean we'll have an opportunity at the end to ask questions again. So just feel free to put them out there. And as you see, even once the panelist has moved on, they're trying to answer those questions one-on-one as they come in the Q&A session. So we're going to try to play another video. Thank you again, Megan. We appreciate it.
You're right across the street from Shawnee Park. It's a beautiful, quiet little part of Louisville.
Right now, there's about 976 households that need to be housed, and that equates to about 1,200 people.
Could be used as additional storage. This is a property that Denton Floyd Real Estate Group has completely renovated this year. We were able to retain the existing residents and move them into renovated units. So we're really proud of this great project for the voucher program here in Louisville.
If you've gone from any level of stability to homelessness, there's some barriers in place there. That's one of the reasons why we're addressing that during this year's symposium.
I am trying to reach out to her regarding her intake packet.
The Landlord Symposium is just our way of letting landlords know that there's housing needed, that it's guaranteed money, HUD-backed money. We're here for the landlords if they should have any questions about the process.
Some people have a stigma around having Section 8 residents in their properties. Sometimes I think your Section 8 residents are some of your best residents. They have to keep their unit clean. They have to have good housekeeping. They have to not get in trouble with the law, or they lose that voucher which they've waited so long for.
Okay.
In the midst of all this COVID, we're really trying to house people in safe, stable housing quickly. We're launching an emergency shelter grant COVID program, and we only have till the end of December 2021 to help these clients. So we want to get them in, we want to get them housed. They get a sense of self-pride back, sense of stability.
Louisville's a very diverse city, and we're very proud that we help serve and provide housing for everyone in the city of Louisville.
We just really look forward to it being a win-win experience for everyone.
A little over 500 households per year. And each grant that we manage with HUD has its own qualifying criteria, but there are some commonalities that I'm going to discuss with you today. So what are the 10 programs that we, HUD-funded programs that we offer? We have the Home Tenant-Based Rental Assistance Program. That's a block grant that is distributed to us through Develop Louisville. This is a short-term housing program where our participants can be housed up to 2 years, and they come in at 30% of area median income. We also have an emergency shelter grant rapid rehousing program. That is a 12-month program where tenants come in and we help them quickly to get into housing and to move through some self-sufficiency steps. These are typically people that have a lower acuity, meaning they don't have any major housing issues. You know, they can work, and there aren't any major mental health issues and things of that nature, so they qualify for this short-term rapid rehousing process. We also partner with other housing agencies out there, such as Simon Hall. And with our Coalition for the Homeless, we have a block of grants that we parse out for our community. One is what we call the big grant. Our SPC Louisville is also what it's referred to. And that's a tenant-based, a permanent supportive housing tenant-based housing program that has about 240 households associated with that. We also manage a grant for rapid rehousing domestic violence, where we have about 4 households that we try to service through that program per year. We also have permanent supportive housing 1, 2, and 3, and these are permanent housing opportunities that have different criteria for participation. These are smaller grants, typically about 10 to 12 participants each. But as you'll note here that our permanent supportive housing 3 is for our chronically homeless. So we try to keep that manageable in that regard. We also partner with St. Vincent de Paul Scattered Site Apartments. Again, this is permanent supportive housing. We have tenants across the city that participate in that program. And we've currently stood up the COVID-19 Emergency Shelter Grant COVID program. I'm going to talk more about this later, but between now and December, we're looking to get, like I said, up to 170 housing vouchers on the street to help mitigate the spread of COVID through this program in our homeless community. So these are the programs that we offer. Now, who do we serve? When you think about the homeless community, you know, sometimes we have in our mind a certain type of person. Well, that's not true. Anyone can be susceptible to homelessness. Anyone can have a financial crisis or a family crisis or a health crisis that results in them being homeless or are unstably housed. And so those are the very people that we seek to serve. So our homeless community, our housed community includes young adults, 18 to 24. It includes seniors, 65 and older. It includes veterans, single adults, families with children, persons with disabilities, as well as, like I said before, those with domestic violence experiences.
So what services do we provide? Can everyone hear me okay? Give me a thumbs up, Marilyn. Yeah, there you go. Well, you won't be able to see me, but we'll just continue on. So what services do we provide? Like I said, it's a great opportunity for the tenant to begin to build their rental history because they're entering into a lease directly with the landlord. RCS Housing and Support we pay application fees, we pay rental deposits on behalf of our participants in order to give them a well-rounded supportive service experience so we can give them a good launch. The tenants may have their rent paid partially or in its entirety. And we've heard how all of these programs, whether it's a program through uh, uh, Section 8 or Louisville Resilience Housing and Support or some other programs, they may have a portion that they pay depending on their household income and situation. And some tenants may qualify for utility assistance through these 10 HUD grants that we manage. Also, rental payments are made directly to the landlord in advance of the first month due date. Now, one of the things that we try to do here with RCS Housing and Support is we process those payments in good faith early. What does that mean? So, right now in October, end of October, we're already setting up December payments. So we have a commitment that you'll have that check in full on time each month as long as the tenant and the landlord is compliant within program parameters. Every unit undergoes an initial and an annual inspection to ensure that the unit is safe and healthy for housing. One of the things, you know, with our tenants who may be coming from literal homelessness from the street, sometimes they may not necessarily know what habitability looks like, but we do. And so we're supporting them through these inspections to make sure that, you know, in our partnership with the landlords, to make sure we give them a healthy, safe environment. And this also includes lead inspections, in addition to the other code regulations that our partners at Louisville Metro Housing Authority talked about. Also, here's the benefit that you typically don't get with your regular tenants. Every tenant, every household has access to monthly case management support. So you have someone here, either here at RCS or one of our case management partners, checking in on that tenant every month, doing when we're not in COVID environment, we do home visits. We come in, we sit in the home with the client, we talk with them and support them in their personal goals towards self-sufficiency. And also, every tenant and every landlord works with a designated housing specialist. So if you ever have a question about your payment, if you ever have a question about compliance, if you have any issues with the tenant, maybe you need someone to help uh, na- uh, uh, help you all talk through some issues that you may be having. You have a housing specialist and a designated case manager that can assist with that rental situation. So next slide. So when you hear about housing vouchers, you may have heard a lot about what's called fair market rent. Well, fair market rent is established annually by HUD and it's updated typically every fall. So the numbers that you see to the right are the new fair market rent rates that HUD has determined are appropriate maximum payments for the Louisville, Jefferson County area. The rent that we pay on behalf of the participants cannot exceed these rates. And unfortunately, or fortunately, Louisville Metro is not able to negotiate anything above these rates. So, one of the things I've highlighted here for your knowing is the one bedroom. We all, whether it's Section 8 or Louisville Metro housing and support, we all have a shortage for one bedroom units. And so we just wanted to we're making this ask. We feel like this is a win-win opportunity, and we just need you to know what our needs are so that you can consider how you can partner with us in it. The other thing I want to share with you in this in what you see here with this fair market rent grid is depending on the program depends on how HUD has designated our fair market rent allocation. What does that mean? So home TBRA, PSH 1, 2, and 3, rapid rehousing, ESG, and the ESG COVID funds are are maxed out at 100% FMR. And these are the amounts for those bedroom sizes. Our grant with St. Vincent de Paul, it allows us to go up to 106% of FMR, and this is the adjustment for that. For our big grant, the SBC Louisville or COC TBRA grant, tenant based rental assistance grant, you may find that those numbers look a little different. Well, what we found was in order to maximize the housing of 240 participants, we found that the average one bedroom rent for those participants in our program came in around $515. So, I know when you receive that voucher, you're like, I don't know if I can accommodate that. But our hope is that with the wraparound services, the stability that we're offering in our support of our tenants, that you'll consider receiving these vouchers as well. So next slide. The other factor that goes into how much we can pay for a particular unit is what's called rent reasonableness. So we use the gosection8.com, same platform that Louisville Metro Housing and Authority uses to validate rent reasonableness for a comparable unit in a particular rental area. So how does rent reasonableness impact the FMR? Housing and support, we cannot pay more than the calculated rent reasonableness for a unit in a rent comparable area, even if the fair market rate is higher. So, what does that mean? So, say you have a unit at, I don't know, let me pick a street, Louisville, Kentucky, and you're charging $800 for your one bedroom unit. But if everyone else in that rental area is charging 750, well, let's say you're charging $760. Let's keep it in line with the FMR. Say you're charging $760 for that one bedroom unit. If everyone else in your area is charging 700 and that's the comparable cost, that's all we can pay for the unit. So what we'll do, we're not just going to assume that you're not interested in the partnership. Our housing specialist will reach out to you and say, "Hey, we've come back and the rent reasonableness is $700. Are you willing to take that rental amount for this particular unit?" And our hope is that you'll say yes, and you'll get that rent paid in full on time. And this is where partnership is really important. So let me just talk to you a little bit about how the rental process works. We receive referrals for our housing programs here at RCS Housing and Support through the Common Assessment Team with the Coalition for the Homeless. They actually are social workers that work with Phoenix Health Center, and they do a pre-assessment of all of our participants that come through our program. Once we receive that referral and determine that that applicant is eligible, we schedule an intake with the potential tenant, and we take them through the paperwork. We talk to them about the program parameters. We have them sign off on various pieces of paper, confidentiality, giving us permission to contact other agencies on their behalf, etc. And then the participant will receive their housing voucher, their landlord voucher, and they have 90 days to find a unit and return that voucher. Once the participant returns the completed landlord packet, we schedule an inspection. We come out, we schedule the inspection with the landlord, the landlord, and we come out, we do the inspection. And then as soon as the unit passes, the participant can receive the keys and move in. So if we approve an inspection on Wednesday, they can move in on Wednesday. You just need to be available to give them the keys. That's our hope. So that's kind of how the rental process works. Now, I know the part that you're really interested in is how do you get paid? So uh, once we receive the completed landlord packet and the unit has passed inspection, the housing specialist begins entering in the payments. First thing they're going to enter in would be any qualifying deposits. Second thing they're going to enter in is that first month's rent. That information is processed through our system, through our Office of Management and Budget. They receive those requests, they process the check, and then they mail the check out to you, the landlord, based on the address that you've put on your landlord packet. Once you get the check, we just ask that you receive it and cash it. That lets us know that all is well on your end. So what can hold up payments? Like we've talked about before, incomplete paperwork and failed inspections. So next slide, let's talk about what incomplete paperwork entails. So through this process, we are truly trying to empower our participants to be self-sufficient. We don't make any assumptions about their ability to handle their business just because they're homeless or are experiencing a season of homelessness. So we give them the landlord packet. We ask them to take it to their prospective location. They select where they want to live. We ask that they present the packet to the landlord, um, and and that's when we're looking for the landlord to really be diligent in making sure that it's totally complete, that there's no missing signatures from you or the participant in that packet, that you don't send back to us blank rent comps. That's one of the documents that's in the application, in the landlord packet. And also, every landlord has to have a vendor questionnaire and a W-9 on file with us and processed through us before we can process a check for you. So that also entails making sure that your tax information is up to date and that you're in good standing with the city to receive funds from the city. So another area that can hold up payments is failed inspections. Again, our units for compliance purposes are inspected annually. And because they're inspected annually, and that's part of the participants staying in good standing with the program and our ability to pay you, we give you 90-day notice to let you know inspection time is coming up, and we try to schedule it early so that there's no disruption in payment on behalf of the participant. Um, New participants that are coming in for the first time must have a past inspection before they can move in. That is so important. I know that you talk to the potential tenant and they're really excited about getting into the housing, and you're really excited about them getting into the housing. Uh, but if you let them move in before they have a past inspection, we can't pay for those days. So make sure that you don't make any commitments that they move in, at least on the agreement that we have, prior to the unit passing inspection. In the event that a unit should fail inspection, you have your annual recertification inspection, and say something, a window's broken and it fails inspection. Well, we do give you a good amount of time to make repairs on failed units through the programs that we manage. And you'll get notice. I think the first one is 7 days, 14 days. We give you up to about 30, maybe 45 days to resolve any uh, failed unit situations in steps. So our hope is that you'll be collaborative with us and give us an opportunity, to keep the client housed and to, keep you as a part of our partnership in the program. So, how do you become an RCS, housing and support landlord? It's real simple. Just be willing to accept the RCS housing voucher when it's presented to you. We've talked about this before. Don't treat the client like anyone else. I mean, treat the client like any other renter. Where they come from is not an indication of their ability to be a good tenant for you. You'd be surprised. I've had times in my own life where I was marginally housed. And so, you wouldn't know to look at me now, but, life happens to all of us, or can happen to all of us. So we just ask that just because they have a voucher, just be mindful or hopeful not to have any preconceived ideas about who that tenant is or what kind of tenant they'll be for you. Two, be willing to enter a 1 year lease with the voucher holder. Again, you'll be making a lease agreement with the tenant directly. We'll just be supporting them and making those payments. Three, return the landlord leasing packet to either the voucher holder or to the housing specialist, whichever, as soon as possible. Because as soon as we get that, that's when we start the process of getting the person in the unit and starting payments. Four, schedule a housing quality standard inspection. Now, you don't have to wait. We'll call you probably before you call us, but be open and flexible for that appointment so that we can get out and get the participant moved in as quickly as possible. And then five, present the new tenant with the keys for move-in once the unit passes inspection. Now, this inspection is just with you and our our HQS inspectors. So the tenant isn't there with us when we're doing this. But as soon as our inspector gets back to the office and validates the pass on the unit, we'll notify the tenant and let them know they're ready to move in. So being available and flexible for that person as well, for the new tenant to get their keys and be able to move in. Six, comply with all grant and program requirements. Um, we walk you through it. It's not like you have to know a 500-page HUD regulatory process. But as Marilyn said earlier, you do want to know about the tenant rights program. You want to know basic landlord responsibilities and things of that nature. And then we'll help support you with any compliance questions that you have for the various grant programs that you will house with us. And then seven, just receive and process your monthly checks. They're going to come in full on time. That's our commitment to you. So, why does partnership matter? Like I said before, one, you get consistent rent payments funded by a HUD grant. Two, RCS pays application fees and deposits for eligible clients. Three is you get a designated housing specialist to answer any of your rental questions or your housing questions, your payment questions. And four, every household is offered case management support at least once a month to help them maintain their housing stability and move towards self-sufficiency. So one thing I wanted to end my presentation with today is the COVID-19 Emergency Shelter Grant funding. This program is new. You know, we're in the midst of this COVID pandemic, and it doesn't look like it's going anywhere fast, but the parameters for these dollars is moving very quickly. So HUD released these funds in order to allow us to use them to house the homeless to help mitigate the spread of COVID. Now, we all understand, you know, you can't social distance if you don't have anywhere to go. And so we are looking to house up to 170 households between today and December. So that means that we're getting referrals in quicker than we can process them, and we're getting housing vouchers out on the street. So what does that mean? That means that people, households, individuals, families will be coming to you looking for units to rent. So we're glad that you're here today so you can hear about the program so that you can be responsive when those vouchers come. The demographic that we're looking at, those that are on the wait list right now, are about 34 young adults, about 25 veterans, about 52 seniors, and uh, there's more than 59 single households, but we're thinking that's about all that we're going to be able to house with the funding that we've received. So through this grant, we receive what is it, $1.34 million in rental assistance dollars that we can apply to this program. And so that's where we're looking to house, like I said, up to about 170 households. We feel like we can do that uh, within this budget. So what's our need for this? Now, this isn't for all programs. You know, we need more than this for even our regular standing programs, but for this ESG COVID program alone, we need 157 one bedrooms, we need 8 2 bedrooms, we need 4 3 bedrooms, and at least 1 4 bedroom. So if you take that note down, write that note down. If you have any of these units available that you're willing to partner with us on, we are uh, pre thankful for your consideration. Some of the incentives that we can offer you that I've talked about before, we will definitely be paying application fees. Like we said before, these tenants should be able to qualify like any other tenant. We'll pay an application fee if you need to do background checks or any, administrative processes. We have funds for that. We also pay security deposit up to 1 month's rent for each unit. And again, you have your dedicated housing specialist and your dedicated case manager. So, uh, the one thing about the COVID program that unfortunately we don't have in all of our programs is we're partnering with our community service block grant team, case management team, and they have funds to offer up to $2,500 of self-sufficiency incentives for every household. Now, I don't have all the details about what that looks like, but for example, if you can go back, uh, so say someone in the household wants to take training with Kentuckiana Works or Kentuckiana Builds, we'll give them maybe a $500 incentive once they finish that program. So these are the kind of things that we're doing because our hope is that after we've wrapped around these services, we've set them up, we've helped them to get into a good leasing relationship with you, we've supported them through this year, that you'll renew that lease with them going forward because they're a good tenant and they're able to stay. Um, so that's what we have there. And next slide. So this is my presentation for today. If you have any questions, feel free to uh, put them in the Q&A. I'm going to see if I can read these and answer them at the same time. What other tools and resources other than the relatively limited listing on Go Section 8 do you use to determine a truly representative sample of market rents? Oh, that would be a Marilyn Harris question from Ian.
I'm sorry, say the question again.
It
I
says,
was multitasking.
what other tools and resources other than relatively limited listings on Go Section 8 do you use to determine a truly representative sample of market rents? So that
So,
I think they're getting at how do we come up with these numbers?
yeah, so that actually, the fair market rent is actually provided to us by HUD. So HUD provides us that document and we are obliged to use it.
Yeah, and then Monique added, we use a local market analysis tool. You can also go to other property websites like Zillow that offer up values of property in the area. Now, that's a Section 8 strategy, but for these 10 HUD House programs that I oversee, it's definitely HUD's driving it from a bus way over in Washington, D.C.
So I will tell you that there is an option that the locality can do their own market analysis. But in all of my years doing this, I've never seen it where the locality does the market analysis, with the exception of Scarsdale, New York, that it actually came back where the what the locality did was actually higher than what HUD had provided.
That's good. Well, we have a great question that came in. My problem with renting to the homeless is they invite all their friends to come in. Will we be able to control this? And the answer is absolutely yes. You have a lease. We talked about this before, and if you have a lease agreement that says, you know, uh, that you can only have guests that come over maybe a week or something like that, then it can be in the lease and they have to uphold that lease agreement. We also have a commitment here through our case management where we talk to them about having guest policies and having safety plans for when someone comes over and you can't get them to leave, what do you do? So that's the benefit of having case management. When also in your lease agreements, what I've seen is you have this thing about non-tenancy occupants. It's kind of like if they're not on the lease, they can't be there, right? So it's you are well within your rights to uphold that, and that also goes back to what we were talking about earlier, where you know, scheduling regular inspections of the unit, letting them know that you're in partnership with them. You're not just there getting a check and you're off somewhere where they can't see you. They should know that you're concerned about your property and you're concerned about them as tenants and that you'll be checking in. I hope that answers your question. Um, let's see. Oh, here's a great one. It says, I have 4 two-bedroom units and have helped several RCS clients. Looking forward to helping you with more. Wonderful. Thank you, Wendy, for that. And with that, I'm going to end my little piece of the presentation by saying you all will receive or have already received the Landlord Property Management Survey. In that survey, it really helps us to hear back from you in terms of what your needs are. And we added to it this time, what unit availability do you have? If you have units available and you want us to know, at the end of that survey, if you got this person, Wendy, she's like, I have 4 two-bedrooms. She can put it right on that survey. It comes straight into us. So when we get a referral that needs that, we can send them straight to you. So leverage that survey to help us help you help us partner together. Well, I think we did it. Even with a few technical glitches here and there, we made it within 2 hours. So if there aren't any other questions, I want to check and see if our director, Tamika Laird, was able to join us.
Thank you, Dr. Lisa Williams. Yes, I was able to join, and for some reason, my video is not coming up. That's interesting. Oh, finally did. Okay. As we say, we're experiencing technical difficulties. Please stand by. I'm so excited about the direction that we're going. This Landlord Symposium, first of all, I want to say thank you to Dr. Lisa Williams for coordinating this effort. And then also I want to thank the panelists for being able to take we know that everyone has a busy schedule, and for them to take time away from their busy schedule to actually help present on this important information that's needed for the community, I appreciate everyone. Thank you so much. Also, I just want to say to our landlords and our audience who is listening, we are in an affordable housing crisis. We need your help. So if you have any units that are available, please let us know. We are trying to house the homeless. We are also trying to house, as far as with our partners, LMHA, Louisville Housing Authority, and other entities that have vital programs that need housing in order for us to be able to assist the most vulnerable. So I appreciate you all taking time out of your busy schedule as well to listen to our presentation. And I hope that it would lead for us to have further partnership with our community of landlords. So thank you. I will now turn it back over to Dr. Lisa Williams.
Thank you, Tamika Lair. We appreciate you so much. And again, special thanks to our partners, the Louisville Apartment Association, All Trade Property Management, and Louisville Metro Housing and Authority, and Louisville Metro Develop Louisville. I just assumed you were one of us, Marilyn UK, so don't think it was an oversight. Again, thank you guys so much. We would love to see in your chat if you appreciated our time together. Just give us a little shout out in the chat as we all leave today. Thank you so much. The landlord survey has been added to the chat as well if you want to access that. Thank you.